What is happening, guys? This is Aditya, and in today's video we are going to have a sliding tab bar inside our React Native application using the simple animated module provided by React Native. So let's get our hands dirty. As you guys could see, I'm inside the very basic app that is generated using React Native in it. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to create those two tabs in the top section. So let's start coding. We are going to import React from React. Then we'll be importing few things from React Native. This would be view, text, and touchable opacity. Touchable opacity. For now, we'll be importing more things at a later stage. Let's export it. This would have a style of flex one. Now let's have a container as well. So we have a nice little padding from right and left section. Margin left auto, margin right auto. Great. Now we can have a parent which would contain our both tabs. This is the first tab which would have a text inside it that says tab 1, and this would be tab 2. Now let's give it a flex direct. The parent should have a flex direction of row. The margin top, let's give it margin top of 40 so we can skip the header part, and a margin bottom of 20. Now for this buttons to have 50% of the parent's width, we need to give it a flex of 1. Since we want our text to be displayed at the center, so justify content and align items would be center. Let's copy paste this and make sure that the other tab has the same design. At this point I think we are good to test. So we have tab 1 and tab 2 ready. Now let's give the parent a height of 36 pixels and a position of relative because we want to have an overlay over these one of these two tabs. So whenever the user clicks on, let's say, tab 2, this overlay would slide from tab 1 to tab 2, and whenever the user clicks on tab 1, we would slide that overlay from here to tab 1. This is why we need an overlay absolutely positioned. So let's have that. This would be positioned absolutely with respect to parent. So position absolute. Width would be 50% because we do not want the overlay to span over the entire parent width. It should be 50%. Height would be same as the parent, so height of 100%. This would have a top of 0, left 0, and let's give it a background color of say 007AFF for now. I think at this point we should test. Alright, so now let's define the border for these two tabs. We cannot have a border, we cannot assign a border to the parent itself because it has its own limitation. We need to assign border to the individual tabs by their own. So let's do that. Border width 1, border color would be same as the overlay. This would be 7AFF, and we say this one has a right width of 0. Also it would have a border top right radius would be 0, and border bottom right radius would be 0. Now let's copy paste this code and paste it over here. Only this time the border left width would be 0, and instead of border top right radius the border left radius would be 0, and the border bottom left radius would be 0. Also, we need to give this a border radius as well. So border radius 4. I think now we can test it. We need to give a border radius for the individual tab as well. Border radius 4. Now let's test it. Alright, so we have the overlay with our two tabs. Now we need to slide this overlay from this to this section and from this one to this. How do we do that, guys? Well, this is pretty easy with the animated API. The first thing that we need to do is whenever we have these two tabs loaded, we need to get the x coordinate of both these two tabs. So we need to get the x coordinate of tab 1 and the x coordinate of tab 2. So the x coordinate of tab 1 would be here, and for tab 2 it would be here. Now when the user clicks on tab 2, we need to slide this overlay from its current position to the x coordinate of tab 2, and in case the user clicks on tab 1, we will slide the overlay from its current position to the x coordinate of tab 1. So yeah, now I think it is time to start the animation. Let's define few state variables. So we'll do state equals active. Active would tell us which tab is currently active, so by default the active tab would be 1, hence active 0. Next we need x coordinate of tab 1. This would be 0 because we don't know what is the x coordinate currently when the view loads. Same goes with x tab 2, it would be 0. And the translate x, this would be a new animated dot value 0. Value 0. Okay, so now the x tab 1 is the x coordinate of tab 1 and x tab 2 is the x coordinate of tab 2. Translate x would is the value that will be assigning to the overlay, so its value would be changing. Now let's have an on press event on layout prop. Now this would give us an event data. Once the tab is ready, we'll get an event from it and we'll set the x tab 1 value to event dot native event dot layout dot x. This is how we get the x coordinate of tab 1, and we'll do the similar thing with tab 2. In case of this one, it would be tab 2. Now on press tab 1, we'll say this dot set state. Active would be 0, and once that is done, we'll define a function which says handle slide, and it would have accept a variable inside which we'll pass x tab 1. Well, we need to destructure this first, so let's do that. Let's destructure our entire state so we do not have to write this dot state dot every time. X tab 1, x tab 2, translate x, and active. Alright, let's do the same thing with our other tab. Active, it would be active 1, and instead of x tab 1, it would be x tab 2. Now let's define our handle state method. Well, it would be a fat arrow function and it will accept one variable which is type. Inside this we'll do animated dot spring. Well, I guess we need to include animated before we can do that. So once a user clicks on any tab, we'll have animated dot spring event call, and let's destructure few states here as well. This dot state, We'll destructure active, x tab 1, x tab 2, and translate x. Now we need to change the value of translate x, hence animated.spring translate x. Now we'll change this to value the type. So in case the user clicks on tab 2, the type would be x tab 2 and the value would be x tab 2 as well. So the 2 value would change to the x coordinate of x tab 2. I hope that makes sense. Now we want it to be done using over a period of 100 milliseconds and start. I think we are good to test this at this point. Now if user clicks on tab 2, well, nothing happens at the moment. Why is that? Translate x to value. Well, we forgot to hook this value translate x to our actual overlay. So let's go ahead and do that. For this to accept the translate x value, it has to be animated.view and the style would have another property which is transform, and it would accept another value which is translate x. Since our name and key value pair are same, so I just have to write translate x. The value is this state. Now let's test this. Alright, so now the overlay is sliding. Also we need to change the text color based on which tab is active. As you could see, currently the text is black. We need to change the text to white in case the current text is active, and the text has to be blue in case it is not active. So well, that's pretty easy. We have an active state which is 0 and 1 based on which state is active. So inside our text we do style, change the color value to, let's say if the active tab is 0, the color would be white, and if it is not active, the color would be our blue, which is 7007AFF. Now let's copy paste this code and place it inside our another text, only this time it would have an active of 1. Now let's test this. So the color is white currently, and if I move over here, the active state changes to 1, so the color is blue. Alright, so now that we have our top section working, now is a good time to define our main content section, which would slide from left to right based on which tab is active. So let's do that. To display our content, we'll be including few things from React Native, which would be scroll view, scroll view, and an image to display few images that I have in my project. So right underneath the parent for the tabs, let's have a scroll view, and inside it we should have two view nodes, one for each tab. So I have a code for the content of the first tab, which is this. It's just content, so I'm copy pasting it. So this is the content or the view of second tab, cat and a dog. Alright, so let's test this out. So as you can see, we have a view or a scroll view with the content loaded inside it. Now the first thing that we need to do is we need to translate the second view out of the screen, because the current tab that is active is tab 1, so we do not want to display the second view. So let's assign it a style of transform, and its value should be, let's say, translate x should be translate x and translate x tab 1. Well, we need to define this state first. Translate x tab 1, it tab 1, oh let's call it tab 2, I'm sorry, because this is tab 2 of course. So this would be translate x tab 2 it would be, what would it be, guys? Can you guess it? Well, it should be a new animated dot value, and it should since we want it to, translate it to out of the screen, it should have a value which is equal to the width of the screen. Only then this view would, slide itself to this part. So for that we'll be needing dimensions from React Native, and we can just have width from it. Dimensions dot get window, oops, and we get width from it, and we say the translate x tab 2 value to be width. Now we need to destructure that translate x tab 2 value here as well. Now let's test it. Transform with the key translate x must be a number. Well, I made a very silly mistake here, guys. Instead of saying just view, it has to be animated dot view, because we are using translate x tab 2, which is an animated dot value. So now second view must be out of the screen. Yes, it is. So now if tab 2 is clicked, we want to make sure that the second view node comes into the picture and the first view node gets out of the picture. So in a fashion like how we did for the first view node, we'll be doing that for the second view node as well, and we'll be copying this code and assign it to the first view as well. But in case of here, it would be translate x tab 1, and let's define or destructure this state here as well. Oops, should be translate x tab 1. Can you guys guess what should be the value of translate x tab 1 by default? Well, it should be new animated dot value 0, because we do not want our first view node to be sliding or to be out of the view, so it should be a value of 0. Now let's handle our handle slide function. Inside our handle slide function, we already have access to the active state, which says if active 0, this would mean that our current or the first tab is active. So we'll be doing animated dot parallel, because we'll be doing two animations in parallel. The first one would be animated dot spring, and we'll animate, let's just restructure translate x tab 1 and translate x tab 2 as well. So if the active tab is 1, we'll change the value of translate x tab 1 to a value of 0, which means it would not get out of the view over a duration of 100. And let's just do a start. After this, animated dot spring translate x tab 2, and it should have a value of minus width, oh sorry, just width, over a duration of 100 milliseconds. Spring, oops, start. Now let's just copy paste this code, and if the active tab is 1, what we'll do is we'll animate this value to a minus width, and we'll bring the second tab into the picture, so this two values should be 0. Now I guess it is a good time to test. Alright, so the current active tab is tab 1. If I click on tab 2, we have this view node coming into the picture. So this is working, but as you guys could see, when I click on tab 2, this view node has some margin from top. This is because it doesn't have, it is not right underneath or right next to the first view node. It is just below the first view node by default. So how do we fix this part? How do we make sure that this particular view slides from the left side but also at the same time it is sliding from this position. Well, that's pretty easy. Whenever this particular view nodes renders for the first time, from the on layout property of that view, we'll be taking the height of this view and we'll do a negative translation along the y-axis of this view node. So I guess that would become more clear if we just start coding. We'll be needing a new translate y property. It would have a new animated dot value. Say by default we want it to be negative of 1000, and whenever we have the first view node rendered, we'll say on layout. It would give us an event, and we will do this dot set state. This dot set state will take translate y and change it to event dot native event dot layout dot height. Yeah, and I guess that shouldn't be an animated value. Let's just try it with 1000. It shouldn't have to animate. So yeah, and now let's just assign it over here. Translate x, we'll say translate y. Let's translate y, and we need to destructure translate y as well. Now is a good time to test this. On layout, well, this shouldn't be translate y value itself. It should be a negative value of translate y. That was my bad. Now let's test this. Alright, so now it is working. We now have a sliding tab bar without using any external library, just using the plain animated module provided by React Native itself. So I hope you guys learned something from the video. Try to write your own code, not just copy paste the code that I'll be mentioning in the description. And apart from this, let me know what should be the next topic for our next video. I'll seriously consider that. And if you guys like the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, share it with your developer friends. Until then, keep coding, keep living, and goodbye.